Chinese hospital completes 22 voluntary organ donations from newborns, raising suspicions. International educators switch focus away from China market. Chinese regime sets modest growth rate of 5% for 2023 amid concern over recovery. What is the new agency that could be created by the Chinese regime? The war in Ukraine caused Beijing's 4 assumptions to almost collapse, expert.
As China's The Paper reported, Renji Hospital, affiliated with Shanghai Jiangtong University, says it had completed 2 kidney transplants from organ donors who were newborns in 2020 and 2021. Unfortunately, 2 girls born on the 29th week of pregnancy died respectively from congenital diseases. After their parents' consent, they became organ donors. The smallest baby only weighed 1.17 kilograms, 2.6 pounds. Although Chinese officials consider these 2 cases scientific and technological advances, they even published the results in the world's authoritative transplant journal, the American Journal of Transplantation. Creators cited some netizens who discovered that, in the publication article, Chinese officials said the premature babies voluntarily donated their kidneys, although their voluntary donation were essentially their parents' consent. However, the fact that the hospital successfully obtained the parents' consent in a short time raises questions for many people. According to conventional medical knowledge, human organs will be unusable within hours of leaving the body, and the babies, in this case, died shortly after birth. Therefore, someone questioned that these babies could not be pre-registered in China's organ donation system. The hospital must prepare for the surgery and convince the family quickly. But here's the paradox. If the babies were healthy, why was there a need to sign up for an organ donation? If they were not healthy and were stillborn, how did the hospital have enough time to convince the parents? Normally, such cases are extremely rare, but Renji Hospital has completed 22 deceased newborn organ transplants to date, making many netizens doubt the donor's source's authenticity. As China changes its education policy, international schools adjust their priorities away from the market. The Financial Times reported on March 5th that their new targets are the middle class in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, with UK institutions spearheading the trend for more stable revenue flows. Education consultancy Carnegie reported in 2019 that 80% of schools slated to start by British institutions were in China. In January, that figure had dropped to 15%. In 2021, while demand for Western-style education was still strong, Beijing imposed curbs that it said were to counter foreign influence. Private schools were ordered to accept fewer students, and foreign textbooks and materials were harnessed. Classes also suffered as overseas teachers left en masse because of the pandemic. In 2022, the British Chamber of Commerce in China projected up to 60% of foreign teachers to depart for the year. The situation was so dire that international schools for foreign children face an existential threat, so is called by Kerr Gibbs, a former executive at the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai. Although China has reopened, restrictions on the education system remain. Jorge Amarola, a partner at Carnegie, said many schools had frozen their expansion plans entirely due to the curbs. A chart provided by The Times based on data from Carnegie shows that the number of planned announced schools in other parts of the world besides China grew to over 20 institutions last year, more than double the figure in 2019. In stark contrast, China recorded less than 5 planned campuses in 2022, shrinking from over 35 institutions 3 years prior. Likewise, demand in India, Vietnam, Nigeria, and Japan is rising. According to education data provider ISC Research, of the 17 British international schools opening in the next academic year, there are campuses of Brighton College, Uppingham and Reigate Grammar in Vietnam, Canterbury in Cambodia, and Malvern College in Barbados. In Japan, parents are keen on education possibilities despite high tuition fees. 11-year-old Sarah Futara, attending the international school in the country, said, "You can do what you like more freely than in Japanese schools." The Chinese regime set a modest official target for economic growth this year, a sign that the world's second-largest economy will face challenges amid last year's downturn. According to Bloomberg, Beijing will target gross domestic product growth of 5% for 2023. Premier Li Keqiang announced the official goal during Sunday's annual parliamentary gathering of National People's Congress. The regime also set a 3% target for the Consumer Price Index, a 5.5% urban unemployment rate with 12 million new jobs. The job figure goal was over 11 million set for last year. The budget deficit goal was set at 3.0% of GDP, widening from around 2.8% last year. The move shows top Beijing leaders are skeptical about a full economic recovery due to the ongoing property crisis, weakening trade, and sluggish consumption. Li noted during the meeting, "We should give priority to the recovery and expansion of consumption." Zhao Hao, an economist at Guitai Junan International, told Reuters, "While the official growth target has been lowered for the second consecutive year, which might be a disappointment to the market, we reckon investors should pay attention to the underlying growth momentum to gauge the recovery pace." Last year, China's gross domestic product grew by just 3%, missing the 5.5% target, and was one of the worst readings in decades. Its economy was hit mainly by strict COVID restrictions, the property crisis, and weakening demand trade. Economists from the Bloomberg poll have projected Beijing would set a higher goal than 5% for 2023, and their median forecast for the GDP growth is 5.3% this year. Bloomberg reported that a sustained economic rebound is uncertain regardless of the recovery's strength. Major factors for a pessimistic outlook of China's economy include deteriorating export demand, unclear signs of consumer confidence recovery, ongoing sluggish property management, U.S.-China tensions. This weekend kicked off one of the most important annual legislative events in Chinese politics, known as the Two Sessions. It is an assembly where Xi Jinping's third term in office is confirmed, and a round of reforms of the Chinese Communist Party takes place. In this framework, the regime is said to be planning to revive one of the most fearsome tools of the Soviet Union era, the KGB. What does it mean? According to the Hong Kong Daily, Ming Pao, the party meeting could see a discussion about the creation of the Central Internal Affairs Commission, or CIAC for short. This refers to a new and powerful agency combining Chinese secret police and intelligence forces, an agency in the style of the KGB of the former Soviet Union. It should be recalled that the KGB was responsible for internal control and spying on foreign countries. Moreover, along with the military, it was one of the most powerful organizations in the Soviet Union, apart from the Communist Party itself. But what impact or power will this agency style have on today's China, which has been ruled by communism for more than 70 years? According to Vision Times, China's Central Commission for Internal Affairs would have control over the Ministry of Public Security and the Ministry of State Security, two top-level police and intelligence bodies in the Asian country. In addition, the two security ministries will no longer be under the jurisdiction of the State Council, which acts as China's central government. They will come under the direct command of the Communist Party. But who will head the agency? According to reports, sources inside the Chinese regime confirm that the current Minister of Public Security, Wang Xiaohong, will head the new agency. Wang also serves as the secretary of the Chinese Communist Party Secretariat and, according to Bloomberg, has been an ally of Xi for many years. If the party were to create the Central Commission for Internal Affairs, its work would be very similar to that of the KGB, at least as suggested by several commentators. An important predecessor of the KGB was the dreaded NKVD, or People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, which under director Joseph Stalin carried out repressions and caused millions of deaths. According to the counseling firm Sino Insider, Xi's leadership would be better positioned with a Soviet-style agency to crush any political opposition and suppress protests ruthlessly.
Geopolitical analyst and consultant Peter Zeihan estimated that the Russia-Ukraine war heavily influenced the Chinese Communist regime's calculation of the plan to invade Taiwan. Zeihan told Taiwan News about four main assumptions for the Taiwan plan that China's regime may have outlined before Russia invaded Ukraine. However, after more than a year of invading Ukraine, Russia's dire situation, according to Zeihan, caused all four assumptions of the Chinese Communist regime to be almost destroyed. The first assumption is that Beijing can win the war quickly and easily in the war to deprive Taiwan of independence. The second one is the weapons China's regime has bought from Russia that will greatly affect the campaign to occupy Taiwan. Zeihan thinks that the regime may have some regrets after seeing the poor performance of Russian weapons in Ukraine. The third relates to the sanctions that the U.S. and its allies will pressure Beijing with if the Chinese Communist Party orders an attack on Taiwan. Zeihan said, if you take the sanctions on Russia and put them on Beijing, you get a deindustrialization collapse, complete with a famine in less than 6 months. The fourth one is that China's regime considers a scenario where they can escape international sanctions by crossing the strait to invade Taiwan. They would be terrified if international sanctions were imposed. It would cause big investors to abandon China.